So I have
Yeah.
one two-part question on activism, and then we'll address Just Stop All. I know we are beyond time already. Okay, so one of the things that has happened in Singapore for a lot of activists, right? When you trace the women's rights activists, organizations like Aware, and I've asked this to Aware people on my show. I asked this to Constance Singham, who's the godmother of activism in Singapore. I also asked Pink Dot, the representative of Pink Dot, or at least he was on my show, not formally as part of Pink Dot, but he's part of Pink Dot. So I asked them this about activists in Singapore being co-opted, and you see this a lot in women's rights activists, also increasingly over the years LGBT activists, maybe climate activists going down a similar path as well, right? And if you see overseas, especially, right, you see corporations co-opting climate activists, and a lot of times climate activists, activists in general, I don't want to single out climate activists, they are happy to. There is something, I've mentioned this phrase before, there is something about being in the corridors of power. It does something to you. And I think no one is immune to that. And we shouldn't kid ourselves and think that we are above that, because we are not. We are just humans who are similarly susceptible to the trappings of power and influence. And I think being in the corridors of power, it does something to a person spiritually, right? It does something to you emotionally, right? Will this happen to the two of you and Ezekiel?
Do you think that climate activists are becoming co-opted in Singapore?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
How does it look?
I mean, I won't name names, but you can see that over the years, you can see the trends of climate activists, some at least becoming more pragmatic, right? And I'm sure they have their reasons, perfectly fine reasons, no problem for me. I mean, I wouldn't judge them for doing it. And so that's the discussion I wanted to have. Is it necessarily wrong to be co-opted? Because if you're co-opted, there are some things that you can do. And of course, there are some things that you can do if you're independent and not co-opted as well. So I would say I already see the beginnings of maybe not fully co-opted, but I do see the beginnings of it. But maybe I'm wrong. You guys are in the space more, so maybe you guys would disagree with me, and I'll defer to your wisdom.
So yeah, maybe I can answer this. So I think every movement, including our climate movement, aims to work towards its death. So if like co-optation, you define it as like all the climate problems is being dealt with 100% and in a super good manner, then yeah, we'll be happy to not do this, man.
Nobody defines co-optation that way. That's solving the.
Okay.
Co-optation means being close to the government, or being part of the government, or being in government circles. That some activists will never be invited to certain government events. People just accept that. There are some who are not, and some who are invited, right? So that's how I would define co-optation. But yeah, anyway, sorry, Nabi.
I think my response would be that we need to hold space for people having different opinions or different theories of change. I think as incredibly heterogeneous society, there will necessarily be people who occupy very different roles in civil society and in making, and have very different ideas as to what is the most effective way to achieve our end goal. I think that co-optation is kind of usually a quite loaded word that gets thrown around to insult or to say like, hey, my equipment is better than yours, right? There's an implicit value judgment there, right? Which is to be co-opted instead. But I think we I think given that we have not arrived at the end point of change, it is hard for me personally to say like you are absolutely wrong in the way you are choosing to cozy up to the powers that be or attend closed door meetings. I think I do not have like I'm not so all-seeing to be able to say that that is the way that we will not get change. I think as civil society, especially civil society that is so small and under pressure in Singapore, we need to be able to hold space for people having different theories of change than us, than our movement. And what to me is important is what these so-called co-opted activists then do when they are in these corridors of power, right? It's like, is it still in your mind these activists who have not been invited into the same corridors of power, how using this perhaps privilege of being invited into closed door consultations with the establishment, are you using then your words and your actions to ensure that people who are not represented at the table are being represented? I think, have to. My personal take, I will not speak on behalf of the movement, is my personal take, is I've learned to be a bit more generous or just like hold a lot more space for people who have different ideas of what the change-making pathway is than me.
I really like the answer. And Isaac was part of SJ Climate Rally as well, right? Isaac knew. So he says that there are a range of activists on the there's a range of activists on the co-opted, not co-opted spectrum, and you need all to get changed. And this is my position as well. And I think exactly what you said. I think we must not be, whichever side we are on, we must not be arrogant, because you need people who are close to the government to get change done. At the same time, you need people who are more independent as well. And I think everyone must understand that they fulfill a role within this civil society sphere. So the last thing that should happen is those who are co-opted say to the independent ones, if you're as smart as me, right, then you'll get things done. Right? So that's because that's a silly way of understanding politics. And likewise, if the independents say, hey, if you're co-opted, you've sold your soul and so on, right? I think we need to understand that. So Teresa said, yes, as long as we have respect for all. No, I would modify that slightly. I would say respect doesn't need to be given like for whatever. It really depends on the condition that if you are invited, if you are within the corridors of power, you have to use your voice. Because a lot of time people, they justify to themselves in their mind, right? This is for the greater good, right? And then the greater good never comes, right? So I think everyone needs to be honest with themselves, understanding what space you occupy and what are the benefits and costs of occupying that space.